We will now decode Helena Blavatsky's The Voice of the Silence, the forgotten book that reveals your unbreakable divine connection to the universe. Within these pages lies the occult knowledge that awakens the dormant abilities within your consciousness and reveals your true spiritual destiny. In 1889, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, one of the most controversial mystics of all time, published one of her last books only a few years before she died, The Voice of the Silence. This mysterious book holds the keys to spiritual dimensions of consciousness that unlock the very operating system of human awareness itself. Within its pages lie fragments of an ancient esoteric manuscript preserved by Indo-Tibetan mystery schools through unbroken lineages of masters. These adepts developed perception beyond normal senses, accessing realms of understanding that modern quantum science is only beginning to glimpse. The manuscript begins with an unexpected revelation about the voice of nada, the soundless sound that can only be heard when the mind reaches perfect stillness. This subtle vibration exists at the foundation of all existence, yet remains inaccessible to those caught in mental chatter. Blavatsky explains that this inner sound is actually your own divine essence calling you home, a frequency of consciousness that awakens dormant spiritual faculties when properly attuned to. In our noise-saturated world of constant distraction, this teaching offers the antidote to spiritual disconnection. What makes the Voice of the Silence extraordinary is its lineage. While presenting herself merely as translator, Blavatsky was granted unprecedented access to one of humanity's most carefully guarded treasures, the Book of the Golden Precepts. During her remarkable sojourn in Tibet, she underwent rigorous initiation with masters who preserved the original source wisdom from which all major religions later diverged and fragmented. These enlightened teachers, whom she called Mahatmas, safeguarded what they termed the primordial wisdom religion, the singular truth that predates all organized spiritual systems. Throughout history, these mystery traditions operated in secrecy, not from elitism, but necessity. Their teachings contained practical methodologies for activating latent human potential so powerful that in the wrong hands, they could be dangerously misused. More importantly, this knowledge fundamentally undermines all systems of control by revealing an essential truth. Divine consciousness exists within each person as their birthright. When fully realized, this understanding makes external spiritual authority obsolete and renders fear-based control systems powerless. What few realize is that these mystery schools also preserved advanced scientific knowledge that modern physics is only now rediscovering. The Tibetan understanding of consciousness described quantum principles millennia before Western science conceived of them. These traditions maintain that matter itself is crystallized consciousness, that the observer fundamentally affects the observed, principles that quantum physics later confirmed. This explains why mystical and scientific understandings are finally converging in our time, as science catches up to what adepts have known for ages. Blavatsky's translation offers something unprecedented, a detailed cartography of consciousness itself. Like an explorer mapping uncharted territories, she provides precise waypoints for inner development, clearly marking transformative thresholds, warning of common diversions, and distinguishing between authentic breakthroughs and mere psychic phenomena. Where most spiritual texts speak in vague abstractions, the Voice of the Silence provides practical guidance for navigating realms of consciousness that transcend physical limitations, allowing you to recognize and access the immortal aspects of your nature. The mind is the great slayer of the real. This single line contains the master key to spiritual liberation. Most seekers remain trapped in mental constructs, mistaking conceptual understanding for genuine realization. Your mind creates an elaborate simulation of reality, filtering all experience through conditioning, beliefs, and identifications. Even spiritual experiences become co-opted by the mind, transformed into concepts rather than gateways to transcendence. Digital technologies amplify mental proliferation, while creating the illusion of expanded consciousness. Algorithms feed existing patterns, creating sophisticated echo chambers that masquerade as reality. Social media platforms hack brain reward systems, creating addiction to mental stimulation that prevents genuine inner silence. Blavatsky teaches us to Let the disciple slay the slayer. This means recognizing the mind as a tool rather than your fundamental identity. The practice begins with observing mental activity without identification, gradually expanding awareness of the silent consciousness in which thoughts arise. Most modern meditation practices have been reduced to stress management. The original purpose was far more radical, creating conditions for recognizing your true nature beyond the mind. When mental activity subsides, a different mode of knowing emerges, direct perception unmediated by conceptual filters. Blavatsky describes this as entering the soundless sound, or the voice of the silence. When thoughts cease their chatter, intuitive comprehension arises without mental processing. This silent knowing reveals the illusion of separation underlying human suffering. The discrete self you take for granted is exposed as a mental construct without inherent existence. But the voice of the silence reveals 7 transcendental virtues, the Paramitas, that function as gateways to enlightened consciousness. These aren't ethical guidelines, but transformative powers that reconfigure your entire being. The first gateway is called dana, transcendental generosity. It represents a fundamental shift from acquisition to circulation. In a culture obsessed with accumulation, dana recognizes that fulfillment comes through giving rather than getting. The second gateway, shila, transcends conventional morality. Beyond following external rules, it represents perfect harmony of thought, word, and action, the elimination of inner contradiction that dissipates spiritual energy. When your entire being moves in unified purpose, extraordinary power becomes available. Kshanti, the third virtue, surpasses ordinary patience. This luminous forbearance remains unshakable amid provocation, maintaining clear perception regardless of circumstances. In our reactive culture where outrage has become normalized, Kshanti offers imperturbable stability, the capacity to respond rather than react. The fourth gateway, viraga, represents liberation from emotional reactivity, neither suppressing emotions nor being controlled by them. This isn't cold detachment, but luminous equanimity that perceives the transient nature of all phenomena, allowing both pleasure and pain to move through awareness without creating disturbance. Virya, the fifth paramita, manifests as spiritual energy that overcomes all obstacles. Unlike willpower that creates internal struggle, virya flows from alignment with deeper purpose. When your actions express your authentic nature rather than egoic agenda, tireless energy naturally emerges. The sixth gateway, dhyana, transcends conventional meditation techniques, representing established contemplative capacity, the ability to maintain profound awareness under all conditions. This permanent shift in perception marks a significant stage in development. The seventh paramita, prajna, culminates the sequence with transcendental wisdom that directly perceives reality without conceptual mediation. This glowing intelligence operates beyond rational thought, comprehending the interdependent nature of all phenomena simultaneously. These 7 gateways develop simultaneously rather than sequentially. They represent practical capacities, measurable transformations in how you perceive and interact with reality. Blavatsky presents 2 distinct paths that mainstream spiritual teachings often obscure. One leads to individual liberation, the other to compassionate service. This distinction cuts through the comfortable spiritual materialism dominating contemporary practice. The first path culminates in personal enlightenment, freedom through transcendence of egoic identification. This attainment, called pratyeka Buddhahood in Buddhist tradition, represents genuine realization sought by most serious practitioners. The second path, the way of the Bodhisattva, involves renouncing complete liberation to serve humanity. Sweet are the fruits of rest and liberation for the sake of self, the teaching acknowledges, but sweeter still the fruits of long and bitter duty, renunciation for the sake of others. This challenges modern spirituality's marketing of ancient practices as tools for personal enhancement. Consumer approaches promise better health, increased prosperity, and improved relationships, all centered on individual benefit. The Bodhisattva path inverts this orientation. The highest spiritual attainment comes through apparent self-sacrifice. By renouncing personal liberation for the benefit of all beings, the practitioner achieves more profound realization than through direct pursuit of enlightenment, transforming apparent limitation into transcendent freedom. The Bodhisattva serves from recognition of fundamental unity, the realization that no being exists in isolation. This awareness transforms compassion from sentimental emotion to direct perception of interconnected reality. The suffering of others becomes as immediate as personal pain, making service the natural expression of clear seeing. Blavatsky reveals the existence of the silver thread, an unbreakable connection between individual consciousness and universal consciousness. This subtle energy channel connects your personal self to your immortal nature. Fix thy soul's gaze upon the star whose ray thou art. This instruction points to the recognition that you are a direct emanation of the divine. The silver thread has always existed, though most humans have forgotten its presence. The silver thread manifests as intuitive knowing that transcends rational thought. Sudden clarity that doesn't come through logical reasoning is this connection in operation. Your higher consciousness communicating with everyday awareness. Most significantly, the silver thread cannot be broken. No matter how lost in illusion you might become, the connection to your true nature remains intact. You can temporarily forget it or fail to recognize it, but you cannot destroy it. This teaching provides the metaphysical foundation for hope. Even in darkest moments, the silver thread remains, ready to guide you back to wholeness. It facilitates inspiration, spiritual guidance, and moments of transcendence. Practices for strengthening awareness of this connection include silent meditation, attentive listening to intuition, and regular contemplation of essential nature beyond social conditioning and personal history. As awareness develops, synchronicities and guidance naturally increase. As consciousness evolves, the silver thread becomes increasingly visible, eventually transforming from thread to radiant channel of light. At the culmination of spiritual development, the distinction between individual and universal consciousness dissolves. The ray recognizes itself as the star. The drop merges with the ocean. Every authentic spiritual path eventually leads to confrontation with what Blavatsky calls the Destructor, accumulated shadow aspects that resist transformation. This encounter represents the most challenging stage of the spiritual journey, where many seekers turn back. The Destructor comprises all aspects we've denied, repressed, or refused to acknowledge. It manifests as fear, doubt, and resistance when approaching meaningful transformation. In psychological terms, it represents unconscious defenses against change, even positive change. The voice of the silence teaches that this confrontation is necessary. The Destructor isn't an enemy to defeat, but an aspect of yourself to integrate. The pupil must regain the child state he has lost ere the first sound can fall upon his ear. This child state refers to integration of all psyche aspects into wholeness, nothing rejected, nothing denied. This teaching reverses conventional spiritual wisdom. Many traditions teach suppression of negative qualities or battle against inner darkness. The esoteric teaching reveals that such approaches strengthen the Destructor. What we resist persists. What we accept transforms. Make hard thy soul against the snares of self, deserve for it the name of diamond soul. This diamond soul represents consciousness that has become unbreakable through integration rather than fragmentation. Like a diamond whose facets align in perfect structure, integrated consciousness cannot be divided against itself. The approach involves courageously facing your shadow, rejected aspects, wounded parts, forbidden desires, and unacknowledged fears. Rather than fighting these elements, observe them with compassion, recognizing them as parts that became distorted through lack of consciousness. This confrontation occurs in layers throughout the spiritual journey. Each time you integrate an aspect of the Destructor, consciousness expands, energy increases, and perception clarifies. What seemed threatening becomes potential strength when properly understood. The ultimate teaching is that the Destructor contains the energy needed for transformation. Fears, when faced, become courage. Wounds, when acknowledged, become wisdom. Denied power, when reclaimed, becomes spiritual capacity. Nothing is wasted. All can be transmuted into light. This recognition transforms spiritual practice. Rather than struggling to attain something external, practice becomes uncovering what already exists, removing veils that obscure fundamental nature. The promise extends beyond personal transformation to collective awakening. As individual consciousness expands, it affects the field of human potential, making awakening more accessible to others. Each person who realizes their true nature creates a template that strengthens collective capacity. This understanding places profound responsibility in your hands. As humanity faces convergent crises, spiritual development becomes necessity rather than luxury. Awakening higher human capacities may determine whether we descend into conflict or evolve toward more conscious organization. Ancient wisdom proves remarkably practical for our current moment. As technological acceleration and geopolitical conflicts intensify, these teachings provide stability amid turbulence, evolutionary tools calibrated for navigating complexity. Despite appearances of degeneration, we stand at the threshold of unprecedented spiritual opportunity. The intensity of global challenges creates conditions for accelerated evolution, pressure transforming carbon into diamond. The choice remains yours. Will you pursue spiritual practice for personal comfort or recognize your role in humanity's journey? Will you settle for temporary freedoms of consumer spirituality or embrace the demanding path of authentic transformation? The veils between ancient wisdom and modern consciousness grow thinner. What once seemed esoteric increasingly reveals itself as practical psychology for navigating turbulent times. The ancient path unfolds, offering liberation not as distant promise, but immediate possibility. If Blavatsky's ideas intrigue you, delve into the source. The transformative power of her most profound spiritual texts can be experienced firsthand. The voice of the silence distills the essence of ancient wisdom into a small but mighty volume that has changed the lives of seekers for generations. If you wish to acquire your own copy of The Voice of the Silence, follow the link in the description below. This book is one of Blavatsky's final gifts to humanity, revealing the path to spiritual liberation through beautifully poetic language that speaks directly to the soul. Your birthright awaits recognition. Consciousness beyond limitation, compassion beyond sentiment, wisdom beyond conceptual knowledge. The journey leads not away from the world, but toward its transformation through your awakened presence. The voice of the silence speaks to you now in this very moment. All you have to do is listen.